Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Maybe we could just kick off with an introduction to this film, Blonde Purple. Is that how we're saying it? Blonde dot purple?
Let's call it Blonde Purple. I think that sounds better.
So yeah, what can you tell us about the film for people who don't know anything about it?
Okay, so it's a heist film. It's set in a nondescript location, but a lot of the characters have American accents, so let's just call it the US. And yeah, it's a heist film. It's really, I thought of the idea just in lockdown, and I was kind of going through a cathartic moment with everything that was going on in the world with COVID and all the riots and the protests and so forth. And I just thought to myself, what, like, if there was a high situation, what would a person do to get out of the bank if it went wrong? If a bank robbery went wrong, how would the person get out of the bank? And if there was a hostage, would they use the hostage as leverage to get out? That's kind of the genesis of the idea. In this instance, it's a 16-year-old girl, and it's a criminal who's not very good at being a criminal. And we've also got a hostage negotiator who's just having a bad day. So there's a lot of different elements that are clashing together and creating this kind of chaos that ensues.
Mm. And that's it. I think it kind of mixes a lot of different genres because, okay, ostensibly it's kind of a heist film, but there's a lot of comedy in there. And we actually feel, I think, a lot of empathy throughout the film with, the sort of protagonist. So where did you kind of take inspiration from other films that you've watched in the past? You know, what were kind of your reference points for putting this one together?
Wow, that's a great question. A lot of films, unfortunately, and fortunately, I think that my pastime is just watching films, and I've watched so many films over the years, and I think every filmmaker says that, and I think they're probably telling the truth. I'm definitely telling the truth. I literally just watch films, so influences come from everywhere, but mainly you can probably see in the films a very 90s heist kind of feel to it. I love the film Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino. There's very, very strong elements of that in there as well. Like Spike Lee and Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson, Kubrick, and Korea. I love Korean films. I love how in Korean films, you think you're going in one direction and suddenly they take you another direction. You're like, what the hell? So there's a lot of that in there. And I also believe that I love history, so I love Greek mythology, and I love the history of the Romans and the Egyptians. And so when you watch the film, you'll see there's a bit of influence in there of that in there as well. I love hip hop. I love how they smash old soul tunes into new beats, and I just love the way they kind of mold it all together. So this film's I like to think of it as like a mixtape. So it's my mixtape, a heist film mixtape.
Yeah. And what can you tell us about the cast? Because, you've got this incredible guy, Julian, right at the center of things, who kind of has to work that thing of, obviously he's a criminal, but, he's not so experienced at it, not the best, not the most competent. And so you've got those bits of humor coming through as well. So, how did you know he was right for the main role? And of course, the chemistry he has with Ellie.
Yeah, the chemistry they had was just fluke. So I'm not going to take any credit for the chemistry they had, but to cast both roles took weeks. That was really important to me, that both roles are really key, because if you mess up your casting in any film, you're going to have a bad film. You may get away with it if you've got a really good script, but typically speaking, if you get the casting right, you're on the right track. So I had to do a self-tape with him, then I met him, and then he did another self-tape for me, and we met again, and we spoke on the phone, and I just needed to make sure that he was absolutely perfect. And in the end, when I made the decision, he started rehearsing and he got on set, he was fantastic from day one right until even now, even doing press stuff, you can tell, he's meant to be an actor, he's meant to be a performer. And with Ellie as well, just to bring her into it as well, she's fantastic. She actually came to her audition late, and I already saw someone that I was like, this person's perfect. And I was like, no one's going to beat Ellie. I mean, no one's going to beat the other person. And then Ellie turns up late, and I'm like, okay, let's see what she does. We might as well see her out of courtesy. and she just blows everyone away. And I'm like, I'm not too sure, but in my heart, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. So the casting process was fun, but also quite nerve-wracking, because I wrote the script and I was like, now I need to fill these void characters into something more palatable. And yeah, both actors are wonderful.
Mm. And what about sort of the making of it? Because obviously you kind of, there's lots of time hops. We kind of start at the end in a way, and then we're kind of working our way backwards. So what was it kind of like having to shoot all that and put it all together? And what do you think the effect is of kind of doing it in that way? I guess it's suspense, but in the reverse, where we might expect it in other heist films.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I like the fact that you're given crumbs of information. So I love giving the audience crumbs of information so they can feed on it whilst something else is happening. So you're consistently having, your little digestives, but at the same time, something big is happening, and you're kind of trying to keep up with the plot, but you've got those little crumbs of information that help you get there. So when it all comes together, you're like, I saw that coming, or I didn't see that coming. And I know that when I watch films, I like to kind of not know what's going to happen next. I think everyone loves that, not knowing exactly what's going to happen next. So it's always good when you tell the audience this is going to happen, or maybe this is going to happen, and you kind of throw a curveball and go, actually, no, something completely different is going to happen. I think you can only do that by giving those crumbs of information to the audience. So they're making it's like Sherlock Holmes. You're making your own way towards the end of what you think the conclusion is, but actually something completely different is happening.
And what were some of the highlights and challenges on set? Were there any hiccups or any moments that were particularly fun to shoot?
Wow. Yeah, we shot during lockdown, the second lockdown last year in December. So straight away, we had COVID to contend with. We had people who thought they had COVID, but actually in the end didn't. We had, situations where there's locations that were meant to be shut, but actually they weren't shut, and they had customers in the shop. And we had this really colorful neighbor. We shot on the street in the car, and this colorful neighbor came out the house, and he was on the phone to the police and like, why are you shooting here? You haven't got permits and stuff. When we actually contacted the neighborhood watch, and we were like, can we shoot here? And they were like, yes, absolutely fine. We love it. It's great. Yeah. But this one neighbor, he wasn't letting us shoot at all. In the end, it worked out really well, because we went to another location and we delayed shooting, and then the sun came out and it actually worked out really well. So I thank you very much. I think his name was David. Thank you very much, David, for your complaints. This worked out really well for us. But I think overall, because we've got such a tight-knit group, and I've worked with this group now on 2 films, with cast and crew actually, it's like a family. So it's, even though we have all these setbacks, it's kind of like memories that we have together as well. And because we know each other, there's no kind of animosity on set, and there's no bitchiness, and it's all kind of just we're working towards the same goal. So yes, there was drawbacks, like any other film, but I feel like we got through them really well.
And being a British, writer and filmmaker, what was the motivation to set it? I mean, I guess, you didn't kind of be very specific about the location, but obviously it's in the US. And you do contextualize the film maybe at the beginning, some of like the bigger themes that come out of it, kind of how are Black men treated in America, kind of the trigger happy police. And there's obviously been developments over, recent years that have brought those sorts of issues even more to the fore than maybe when you originally started writing it. I don't know. So maybe you can just talk us through a bit through some of those decisions and what you want the film to say about some of those things.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So my first film was called 6 Rounds. It was about the riots in London in 2011, and again, we had themes of kind of socio-economic problems and race and so forth. So it's definitely a prevalent theme in my life, not just in the film, really. So I feel like all my films will have that as an undercurrent anyway. But on top of that, last year, as I said before, with the protests and the George Floyd killing and stuff, that put me in a zone, and I think it put the whole world in a zone where we're all kind of being self-reflective. And I just wanted to make a film that definitely had that subject matter running through it, because I think it's a conversation to be had, and I don't think it's literally it's black and white, but I don't think it's as easy as going, this is wrong and that is right. Obviously, if a police officer kills anyone the way they did to George Floyd, it's wrong, automatically that's wrong. But I feel the wider topic is not just a black and white subject, and that's what I did in the film. I wanted to present the issues to you, but not give you conclusions or even my thoughts on what those subjects are. So, there's conversations about the N-word, there's conversations about how police behave towards black people, or towards criminals, but mainly towards black criminals or black people in general. So yes, it's definitely a theme that definitely rings true to me as an individual. And the reason I said it in the US as opposed to the UK is that I feel like, especially in the US, it's definitely a huge issue. It's a big problem in the UK as well. It's a really huge problem in the UK as well. But I felt like at that moment in time, it felt right to set it in the US. And as I said, there's UK characters in there as well. So it's not just a US theme. I think it's a world theme. Slavery was a world theme. But it's such a vast subject that, even though I've made this film and I've spoken about the subject, I've not even touched upon how huge the subject is, really.
And what do you think the kind of effect of, tackling some of these issues through something that's, essentially not particularly specifically about race, and there is humor and it's kind of an entertainment film rather than, say, a hard-hitting documentary? It's kind of maybe coming at it, what people aren't thinking about it being kind of didactic in any specific way. It's just being entertained, but they're maybe learning something along the way.
That's a magnificent question, by the way. So here's my opinion on that is, I feel like over the past few years, we're getting a lot of content that, in my opinion, isn't handling the subject very well. I feel like it's really on the nose. And even stuff like Bridgerton, which I'm not a fan of, I like what they're doing because it's not handling it on the nose, but at the same time, I feel like it's almost saying these things didn't happen. So there's a lot of content that's coming out that's, I feel, counterproductive. And I always feel like if you're going to approach a subject, if you're going to feed, I don't know if you've got any children, I haven't, but I know when I was a child, when I used to have medicine, my mum would give it to me with something sweet, and it's more palatable that way. So I like to present the info, and the film completely presents the information in a way that's kind of, it's not in your face, and it's not kind of saying, this is wrong, that is right, this character's correct, this person's wrong. It's information that if you sit down and you kind of take it all in, you'll understand what's being said. If you sit down, you want to have a good time and just watch a heist movie, then you can do that as well. But you've seen the themes that are in there, you've understood the themes that are in there. So I'm hoping that everyone else does as well. And I just feel like the best way to approach things is kind of presenting the information, discussing the information, and then coming to your own conclusions. And hopefully the film's done that.
And I think also what it does, do you think it's, making people think about what pushes people into a life of crime? And it's kind of giving that, like gradually getting the backstory, and not just seeing people as, good and bad, the villains, the good guys. Exactly. And it's like kind of creating a lot of nuance in that area. So is that something else that you wanted to kind of bring out? Yeah, definitely. I always thought to myself in my head, actually, the teenage girl in the bank is actually the protagonist. And then the unnamed main character is actually the antagonist. I kind of approached it from that direction. And my personal views on characters in films, that every single character is a main character, because in life, we're all our main characters, we're all our own main characters. So I hate when I see a film and characters just pop up for a second and their purpose is to like push the plot along. I actually have a couple of those characters in there, so I'm not going to say that I'm perfect in that regards, but I always try and make sure that I flesh out all my characters, so that when actors get scripts, they know exactly what the motivations for the characters are. They know what their character was doing in the morning that day, or what they were doing for the past 10 years of their lives. Have I answered the question? Have I gone off track? Have I answered it? No, I think you have. Yeah. And, in terms of diversity in films, you know, like how you're saying, some pieces of content are doing it better than others, but do you see that we are at a bit of a turning point? Do you think things like the streaming services, you know, the fact that there are more opportunities out there for different types of storytellers, different people to be, you know, the leading characters in films, that things are changing? Or do you still think there's a long way to go before we kind of see it more balanced representation on screen?
I think we're making huge strides. A lot of it is sometimes performative, which I guess is good and bad, you know. Like, again, Bridgerton, I don't think it's performative so much. I think it's wrong, but I don't think it's performative. But I think it's a great opportunity for young actors of different races to have, you know, lead roles, which is cool. I prefer if they just made a new property and put them in that, but that's a different story altogether. I do think there's huge strides being made. I think there's a magnificent strides being made over the past 3 to 4 years, which is really cool. I think even, you know, there's a lot more female directors, there's a lot more female protagonists in media as well, which is great. And I saw an article the other day where I think an MP was complaining that Doctor Who was a female, saying that it's, you know, it's destroying male role models, and this, you know, I don't even think I need to comment on that. I think we can just laugh about that. But I love how diverse everything's becoming, and I'm hoping it continues like that. I'd love to see more diversity behind the camera in terms of more female writers, more female camera people, more female directors, more Black filmmakers. I think there's still a huge problem there. If you go on any major film set, you know, they're probably not hitting their quotas in that regards, but in front of the camera, I feel like we're making magnificent strides, and it's really cool.
We've already touched on a lot of the points, but, you know, just to summarize, what do you hope people will take away from watching your film?
Well, first and foremost, I hope they have fun. That's why I made it. It's a heist film, so have fun. If you want to take away the social messages as well, please do. But I really hope they have fun. I hope it makes them think. I hope it makes them really want to. I think you've gone through the notions and the motions of feeling what the characters actually were thinking, and there's exact moments. So I want people to feel that as well, and I want them to go and watch it. And, you know, I'm available to discuss if they want to discuss any elements of the film. I'm available on Twitter and Instagram and all over the place. So yeah. And
you already know then what you're going to be working on next for your next film? What's in the pipeline for you?
Yeah, I've started writing a sci-fi script, which I hope to get off the ground next year. And then there's other projects that have been kind of the back burner for the past 2 years or so. So I might pick up the strand of those. So yeah, I guess it really depends on the universe, where the universe wants to take me next, really. If people take well to this film, I guess it will open up a few more doors for me. And I'm hoping that I can stay in the industry for some while yet. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was so lovely to chat to you. And amazing. Thank you. All right. Same to you. Take care. Cheers, Marcus. Have a good day.